Hey, what's going on? Welcome to our YouTube channel. I'm Jonathan, and in today's episode, Brandon and I will be discussing the whole Freeman situation. So, Devonta Freeman was a really good running back coming out of Florida State University who ran a 4.58 40-yard dash and had a 31.5-inch vertical. He was all over that NFL combine and looked impressive throughout his 6 years in Atlanta before eventually getting cut by the team. In 2019, Devonta Freeman had a career low 3.6 yards per carry. He only played 14 games and rushed for 656 yards, with only scoring 2 touchdowns. So the fallout with Devonta Freeman here is a little scary. In 2018, due to injury, he only played 2 games. So is this 28-year-old free agent, Brandon, worth the risk?
Yeah, I think so. I think honestly, I think he's a good insurance back if you need one, or just a guy to have for just rotation at all. I mean, yeah, I think after 2017, that like fantastic breakout 2017 season, um, it kind of has gone downhill from there. And yeah, 2018 you can chalk up to injuries, and 2019 it was just another slow start. And again, it's probably coming off from injuries. But I think he could be a great vet and can really compete in any backfield
Mhm.
right now. I know there's a lot of standout running backs. I know there's a lot of teams that have already a depth of 2-3 solid running backs. But there's a lot of teams also there's a few that also need you know more rotation, or at least a starting caliber running back, and I think that's what he will provide.
Yeah, so for me, what I'm thinking here is in the NFL nowadays, it's very easy to come along a good rookie running back. That means like in this year's draft, you have Clyde Edwards-Helaire and J.K. Dobbins, who are already being great pieces for their team. So for me, a 28-year-old Devonta Freeman doesn't look as enticing as one of those young guys on those rookie contracts. I don't know which team is going to pay him, but we have 4 teams. Apparently, we have 4 teams in the mix for Devonta Freeman that he could go sign with right now. So I'm quoting Devonta Freeman here when I say I'm ready for whatever team needs a vet. So I think he knows his role a little bit, and he won't go in
Yeah.
and try and be this starter, but he for sure wants to compete for a role in that backfield that he joins, whichever team it may be. But let's get into a little speculation here, Brandon. So we don't have much information to work with because they're withholding it, or Devonta Freeman wants his privacy in selecting what team he wants. We understand, but we're gonna give you guys our opinions on where we feel he might land. So we were discussing this a little bit ago, and we both agreed the Colts without Marlon Mack are missing a piece. They have a hole in that team.
Yeah, they are, and the rotation it's not bad. I mean, I know I know Marlon Mack was a starting caliber, but I think honestly, they have the offensive talent to surround Rivers with. I think though, having somewhat of the same rotation as before, like 3 running backs, I think honestly can give you this. I can give you similar production as to what possibly San Francisco, probably not the same level, but but almost the same production San Francisco has when using their running backs. So I think Indianapolis needs to probably look at him and say, listen, like we lost Marlon Mack for what majority of the year, if not the whole year.
He's out for the
Um,
season.
yeah, so he's out. Um, you know, we're trusting Philip Rivers to really push us for maybe better than an 8-8 season. I think getting a guy like Devonta Freeman could really help them. I know Marlon Mack it probably won't give the same level of production as Marlon Mack would have, but at least it gives you a fighting chance because offensively they look great. Like the receiver core looks great.
Yeah.
Um, but I think it does come down to uh, I think really what they could really benefit from and really help Philip Rivers in towards like maybe the latter half of the season is definitely having better running backs and a better rotation of running backs. So
Yeah, let's not forget how elite Devonta Freeman is when he is healthy. He tore up the league in 2017.
yeah,
And I know people forget because When in football, it's a game of trends, and if your name is on the news, your name is hot, and people buy in on the idea of a player. Devonta Freeman's kind of been forgotten, and the Colts can definitely get a steal here if they decide to take the risk after losing one of their starting running backs. So the thing is with the Colts, I believe they're the clear-cut favorite to sign him, but does he want to play for them? The opportunity there might be a little slim because they do have rookie Jonathan Taylor and Nyheim Hines, who are both going to compete in that backfield. And I feel like Devonta Freeman wants more of an opportunity to show people he still has it. So, with that being said, we're moving on to our second team here, who I feel like could really, really benefit from signing Devonta Freeman, and that is the Pittsburgh Steelers. And I'm going to go into a little bit because I am a Steelers fan, and over the years, we've had Le'Veon Bell, and then we had a good backup running back in James Conner, and he turned out to be great. But ever since then, he's been injury riddled, man, and I just can't help but think after week one, he sprained ankle, hardly even played in the game. Why don't the Steelers go out and sign a great insurance?
Well, I think also his injury isn't as bad. I mean, yeah. You can make the same case for another team in Denver, with Philip Lindsay. I mean, those two guys, not necessarily are injury ridden, or injury prone, but their injuries aren't as long term as Marlon Mack's, obviously. So it's also the case of would Devonta Freeman want to play, knowing that he might become second or third string once James Conner comes back. I mean, I know he said he'll be ready for whatever team needs a vet, and that probably does mean that he could do that role. But it's also, I think he also wants to prove to teams that passed up on him, like Seattle, who signed Carlos Hyde over him, is that, listen, like, even if I'm a second down, if I'm a second or third option running back, like, I could still put up numbers. I don't know if Steelers are going to give that to him, just because I think honestly, once James Conner comes back, I think he then dips to third string running back or third on the depth chart. And I don't know
because of Benny Snell Jr.
Yeah, I mean, he had a great game against the Giants.
Yeah, he did. He really stepped up. But I'm saying if you have an elite running back like a healthy Devonta Freeman could be, we don't know enough about Benny Snell. He's still in his second year and doesn't really get the opportunity that allows him to shine. As I was touching on earlier, it's about going out there and following a trend. So if James Conner, he had an injured season last year too and was out a bunch of games. So the Steelers do struggle sometimes at dealing with a run game that seems lackluster without James Conner at times.
Yeah, and no, that's true. And I think, honestly, the Steelers also have a great offensive line. I think probably out of the teams that we're going to mention, probably one of the better offensive lines compared to each of these
The Colts
teams
as well.
Yeah, I mean, they're starting to build up a better offensive line after, they killed Andrew Luck. But, yeah, they are – I think, honestly, what Devonta Freeman could offer to the Steelers could be just Connor insurance short term. And I don't know if he would probably want that. I think being a client of Drew Rosenhaus, I think it's going to be you go to a team that's going to guarantee you the next contract and guarantee you you're going to be looked at in next free agency.
I feel like he's going to get a 1-year prove-it deal where he's going to go out, not get a long-term contract, but they're going to settle on something short, maybe a 1-year, few $1 million deal that it's basically, okay, you say you have this talent, we'll scout you a little bit, but go prove it. We'll give you the opportunity. And obviously he's choosing between 4 teams right now, so it's just really important that if he does make this decision, he's got to prove to himself, and not only himself, but the league, that he still has it if he wants that payday.
Yeah, and I mean, listen, he's going to offer whatever team, a great insurance back. I'm not necessarily too high on the Steelers. I mean, I am in terms of like him like being successful, but in terms of like just having like a 1 season deal and then probably bouncing out of the league again. I mean, to be honest, it's not. I wouldn't. If I was a running back, I wouldn't be too enticed because it would probably be more so trying to get trying to get a next like longer extension or something like that. Maybe a 2-3 year deal after this 1 year rental.
So I'm not understanding your point here, but rather than go to a team with a established number one, he would want to go in where he can compete for that number one.
I think so.
Okay.
I think honestly he wants to prove that once again he could probably be a number one option for a team, or at least a guy considered a number one option. Not so much like, hey, like he's a guy that will throw in when like James Conner gets injured, or we just need a third down conversion or something like that.
Yeah, that leads us to our number 3 and 4 teams, because both teams are filled with young running backs who don't really carry the weight of a veteran like Devonta Freeman when it comes to handling that 3-down workload. So the third team, which we have a little edge over the fourth team, but the third and fourth team respectively are the Bears and the Jaguars. So let's touch a little bit on the Bears, because I feel like with David Montgomery is a great young back, you know what I'm saying? But they don't have that veteran presence in that backfield. I know they have Tariq Cohen as well, but they just need a guy that you can go and trust to get you a first down or trust to get you that touchdown. David Montgomery is an okay running back in the red zone. We saw last year that he had some flashes of greatness. But for me, the Bears are missing several pieces this season, and a veteran running back is one. Yeah. What do you think about the Bears?
I like them. I like them a lot. I think in terms of, I mean, listen, the thing that's going around Allen Robinson is a little bit concerning. Obviously, that's Trubisky's number one option. I think also it does. I think the fact that David Montgomery and Tariq Cohen's productions aren't at the level that we're like seeing or expected. Or expecting, last season. I mean, I think they both have pretty decent seasons. Not gonna lie. But again, like you said, I think it's about that veteran presence. I mean, I look at Detroit and what they did. I mean, they drafted DeAndre Swift, and then once AP got released by
jumped on him.
The Washington football team, they signed him like the next day, and I think honestly he's going to provide a great veteran presence. So that's what. I mean, 28 years old, we say veteran presence. I mean,
he's young.
He's still young, but he still has probably a little bit more experience than Montgomery and Tariq Cohen. So it could just be, again, another option that they throw in there. And I think he could probably prove that, hey, I think this could be one of the teams that, again, like he proves that he's a number one option on a team, or at least try to battle with Montgomery and Tariq Cohen for touches.
So I like the Adrian Peterson thing that you're saying here, because he was in the Super Bowl, Devonta Freeman. He played for the Atlanta Falcons when they did have their run and lost to the Patriots. So he has experience. He was on that team, but obviously he was facing with injuries and all of that. But he is a leader. We know it. We've seen it. He was been in 2017. He was taken top 5 in fantasy drafts because he was that good. So let's not forget here that he could still boom. I like what you're saying. I see the comparison a little bit with Detroit having DeAndre Swift and Kerryon Johnson, 2 young running backs. That kind of is a similar fit here for me. And Devonta Freeman might be better than Adrian Peterson right this second. I'm not talking career-wise, obviously, but as a running back, wouldn't you take a 28-year-old rather than Adrian Peterson?
I mean, yes, but we're also talking about Adrian Peterson. It's not like this guy was doing nothing for Washington. Like he was still putting up not the same level as obviously like we saw in Minnesota, but to an extent, like he was putting up some good numbers for his age and showing some good output for his age. I think now it's just about veteran presence. And yeah, would you take a 28-year-old over Adrian Peterson? Sure, but it's also Adrian Peterson, and it's also he could still probably put up almost the same level of production as Devonta Freeman right now. I feel like.
Yeah. So it was just a theoretical question. I know both players are going to have great value for the teams that they're on. But let's talk a little bit about the Jaguars here, too, because the Bears and the Jaguars are in kind of a similar situation. I know the Jaguars are expected to have a way worse season than the Bears, but both teams are supposed to be on the bottom half of the teams in the NFL. So the opportunity is there because the Jaguars did release Leonard Fournette this offseason and have had holes in that backfield. We saw it in week 1. They did get the win on the Colts, which is something that we can talk about a little because the Colts and the Jaguars are both in this. The best team on this list is the Pittsburgh Steelers. If he
Yeah, I mean,
goes
yeah,
to
that's fair. Like in terms of quality, yeah, like Steelers are the best team on this list, but for Devonta Freeman, for his level, to prove that he deserves another 2-3 year extension on a team, and to be the number one running back, I think he needs to stat pad a little bit. And I think Jacksonville will give him that.
Yeah, so for me, Jacksonville looks enticing, but the only thing is, does he go behind a good line or does he go for touches? Because if you get, I don't know, 15 great plays behind a good line versus a mediocre season in Jacksonville or Chicago, what looks better for him?
No, obviously, I think I think what's probably going to look better for him is if he does well in Jacksonville. I think if he does well, because Jacksonville's offensive line isn't the best, um, but if he does well in Jacksonville, that's the difference. I think if he does well behind behind not the strongest offensive line compared to the Steelers, I think then it shows like, hey, like this guy still can be a top productive running back in the league. Um, but if he doesn't do well, obviously it's going to flame out on him. I think if he wants to take a bet on himself, I think it's good. I think the bet on himself is Jacksonville. But if he wants to try to compete and win and prove like behind a good offensive line, I would look at the Steelers. I would look at the Steelers as a option for him as
Yeah.
well, just because they have one of the best offensive lines. They're really good at protecting Ben and James Conner. And now if they do sign Devonta Freeman, like obviously he's gonna do well with that offensive line, but will he get the touches to prove that? Like that's the
Yeah.
difference.
So, yeah, that's a good point you bring up, Brandon. Just 3 other teams that we potentially saw him going to. We're not going to go too deep into these because they are a little like a bit of a reach, but the Eagles, the Rams, and the Washington football team all, for me, caught my eye. We spoke about Adrian Peterson leaving that Washington team. The Rams, without Todd Gurley, have Malcolm Brown and Cam Akers, 2 young backs. And then the Eagles with Miles Sanders, who's hurt now, and Boston Scott backing him up. So he could find a good role in Philadelphia and Washington. Rams is going to be a little more difficult.
Yeah. I think, listen, it's all about how you're going to get that next contract, right? With Devonta Freeman at this point. I mean, we saw with, again, I'm going to bring him up, Carlos Hyde. He's sort of now bouncing around the league a little bit, providing just 1-year contracts to whatever team needs just needs that, veteran presence running back or a third down back. If that's what his career is going to pan out for him, that's what his career is going to pan out for him. But I think what's the big thing here is that he needs to prove that he's the 2017 Devonta Freeman. And I think 2018 and 2019 was a little bit unfair. And I think obviously with Atlanta getting Todd Gurley, it now pushes him down the depth chart. And I think he realizes that, like, I think now he realizes that he needs to be, more of a rotational running back rather than, if a starting running back. But he could be RB1 on a team like Jacksonville.
Okay,
But
so that's gonna lead right into my next and final question for this video. What would be the best fit for him in fantasy football?
I got to go with either the Colts or the Jaguars on this one. I'm
Okay.
taking I'm taking either one of those two. Jaguars, I think, is the obvious pick just because he's going to get the most touches and he's going to probably get, I don't know about the most yards, but he's going to get the most productivity out of. You're going to get, as a fantasy owner, you're going to get the most productivity out of him if he goes to Jacksonville. With the Colts, on the other hand, yeah, he's going in a bit of a crowded backfield, but I don't doubt that with a decent offensive line that he won't be able to put up, you know, good numbers as well. And the same thing with the Steelers, but with the Steelers, once James Conner comes back, I see him sliding down a little bit.
Yeah, so
So
for me, my two teams that I'm looking at here that are gonna potentially produce, obviously you said Jacksonville and the Colts are great fits for him. But for me, I'm looking at the Washington football team and the Pittsburgh Steelers here.
yeah,
Because even if Connor's healthy, he could have red zone presence. And we all know how vulturing touchdowns work. So he could potentially be that goal line back because Connor Connor does get hurt very, very often.
yeah,
So if he's that insurance policy, he won't just be an insurance policy. He'll get minutes. He'll get snaps, and he'll look good if he behind that line. And my second team in Washington football team is probably one of the most underrated teams this year. They looked good in week one. They got the win, but that running back group didn't do so great. I know Peyton Barber had a few good runs, and Antonio Gibson didn't look great. But if they get Devonta Freeman, they could do some damage this year. So keep an eye on
yeah.
that. Those are our takes on the best teams for Devonta Freeman and the best landing spots for him in fantasy football. If you did like this video, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and share it with friends. This has been Backseat Banter.